Hi, my name is Jen Bailey, and I'm the Executive Director of the Dan and Margaret Maddox Fund. When I think about my journey to this role in philanthropy, I think about the definition of philanthropy, which is service to mankind. And when I think about my family's origin story, growing up in the Midwest, the child of the second wave of the Great Migration, I think about the church mothers of my childhood, who to me may not have had the dollars to donate to different places, but embodied that spirit of service to mankind. I like to say that I knew that the miracle of the loaves and fishes were real in my childhood because I saw what some church mothers could do with some spaghetti and dinner rolls. They fed their entire community. And so when I think about my own pathway to this role, I carry the spirits of Sister Weldon, Sister Watson with me as I think about what it means to be in service to our community, what it means to give to our community. And their stories are part of my story, a part of, I think, an unfolding lineage of Black women who have and continue to contribute to building and bolstering up their communities in meaningful ways. And so when I think about this role that I'm now in at the Dan and Margaret Maddox Fund, I carry that lineage in my bones, that lineage of service and what it means to care for the greater Middle Tennessee community. I think one of the values that is an understated one that is embodied in how I try to inhabit my role in the world is a value around radical joy. So often in the world, I think our attention is called to that which is going wrong, to the chaos, confusion, disruption that feels ever present. But one of the things that I learned from what I like to say the women that in my life who are women who survived the trauma of Jim and Jane Crow, survived the trauma of relationships gone asunder, of domestic violence, is that in spite of their circumstances, in spite of the trauma that they faced, they always held joy as a discipline, as a practice. We always celebrated. And in this time, again, when I think it's so easy to slide into a space of despair, holding up joy as a principle that helps lead us to a sense of greater hope is one that I hold very near and dear to my heart. I think the insight I would share if I was looking back, I think one of the things I like to imagine in these sort of exercises is myself as a church mother myself. So as that lady with the big hat on the front pew with hard candies in my purse. And if I were giving wisdom to that next generation of people coming to get those hard candies from my purse, I would give them the advice that it's okay to grow deep and wide versus fast and long. I think as a young person, we are often taught to hustle, and particularly within the Black community, there's a sense that we need to be ascendant to bring everyone else up with us. While that hustle is certainly real, to do so without tending to our holistic well-being, to do so detached from community, only leads to feelings of isolation, burnout, and periods of, I would say, self-destruction. And so to grow deep and wide is to invest in your community, to know that ultimately our success is predicated on what we're able to do collectively as a team rather than what one individual does. And that model of collective leadership and collectivism that I think is so essential to how Black people have survived in this hostile American context for generations is essential for knowing that when I need to step back, somebody else will step in and vice versa, that there's a mutuality, that when you invest in growing those communities occurs that allows us to be in the fight for justice, for equity, for building more loving and thriving communities over the long haul. I think I understand the gifts and talents that I've been given as not solely belonging to me, but being a gift from ancestors, from spirit, to use to be in service to others. And so when I think about the work that I do, whether that be in my church community on Sundays or in my day job at the Dan and Margaret Maddox Fund, I see those gifts as only as effective as I'm able to use them to serve the broader community. And so I continually find myself learning, growing, changing, find those gifts evolving, discovering new gifts. And so I think one of the greatest gifts I've been given is the wisdom and insight, which I think is ancestral, that we are called to be continual learners, that we never reach a place or sort of that apex where we know everything, and that there's always wisdom to be gleaned, not just from traditional sources, but from what I like to call them my senior saints and my playground prophets, that everybody has the capacity to teach us if we're open to the lessons that they have to give us. I think a lot about when my mother passed in 2016, the ways in which community surrounded us in those last months of her life. She was home on hospice after a 14-year battle with cancer. Our family never went hungry because there was always someone from the community coming with a pan of food, with a kind word, with a prayer, with a blessing. And I think so often those types of generosity or those types of really service aren't seen as valuable in the same way that, say, writing a big check to an organization is. But to me, they form the very foundation of what true philanthropy and service looks like. I think game changers are those who take stock and observe the conditions of the world around them and are not satisfied with the status quo remaining the same. So it's those folks who marry their commitments, their values, and that which they want to see the world become with concrete action. It could be major action, it could be minor action, but people who are not willing to stay stuck in what is, but have the creativity, the imagination, the vision to imagine what can be, and then work towards it. Pay attention to those who've been here before. There is so much embedded knowledge in our community. People who are willing to share their lessons, their stories, their experiences. And it is learning those stories and understanding yourself as part of an unfolding story of what Nashville is and will become that I think is the foundation for any transformation that you want to see in the community. I'm so excited about the work of the Dan and Margaret Maddox Fund in this season as we are reimagining ourselves as a foundation for the future. Our commitments and our work sit in the fields of youth and the environment, and in a time where I think both of those categories of work feel under threat, I feel excited about the creativity and imagination of our partners, of the organizations that we both financially support and support with other resources, their vision for the future that is not, again, stuck in the ways of the past, but is imagining something different even in the midst of the toxic conditions we might find ourselves in. To quote one of my favorite thinkers, Mia Birdsong, we're being called in this season to plant seeds in toxic soil, and I'm excited to see in the midst of that and in the practice of that what wants to emerge and be born in the midst of all of these conditions before us.